Hey guys, welcome back. In today's video I'm going to be showing you the step-by-step process of building a computer. I'll be going through how to install the hardware, the best ways to install it so that it doesn't damage anything, and then also where all the different cables and plugs and connectors go. So anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let's get started. The first step in assembling the computer involves installing the CPU or processor onto the motherboard. This involves lifting a small metal arm and what is known as a retention bracket off of the motherboard in order to insert the CPU. The CPU needs to be correctly positioned and placed down into the motherboard socket. Then the retention arm and the metal bracket lifted back over the CPU and fastened down to keep the CPU in place installed into the motherboard. The next step is to apply some thermal paste. This helps to transfer heat between the CPU and the CPU cooler. Amount of thermal paste the size of a rice grain is enough. Then, position the CPU cooler over the CPU and ensure that each of the pins on each corner of the CPU cooler are lined up with their corresponding holes on the motherboard. Then, push the pins in and twist the tabs to ensure that it is fastened down to the motherboard and will not come loose. Then, bring the fan wire around and connect it to an available fan port on your motherboard. Also ensure that none of the wires are going to get stuck inside the fan blades. The next component to install is the RAM. Ensure that the white clip on your memory slot is open. Then position the RAM above the memory slot and ensure it is the correct way around. Then, lightly push it down until you hear a click. This means that the RAM is installed successfully. The next step is to install the motherboard into the computer case. Line up the motherboard and ensure that the screw holes on the motherboard are in line with the screw holes on the computer case. Then, using a non-magnetic screwdriver, put a screw into each of the 6 screw holes onto the motherboard. The amount of screw holes may vary depending on what size and type of motherboard you use. The next step is to install the power supply. Line it up with the mounting holes on the computer case and then slide it into place. Then, put in 4 screws at the back of the computer to fasten the power supply to the computer case. The next step is to install any case fans. Position the fan over the fan grill at some position in your case, wherever it is, and then use 4 fan screws to screw it into place. You may have to use your hand to support it on both sides, depending on what kind of fan it is and whereabout it's located. The next step is to install the graphics card. Line it up above the port that you need to plug it into, ensure that it is the correct size and speed port, and then lightly push it in until you hear a light click. Once it is in place, you can then use 1, 2 or 3 screws depending on the size of your graphics card to screw it into the case. The next step is to install the hard drive. This involves removing a small bracket, then sliding the hard drive into place in the correct slot. Then, insert the bracket again and ensure that it firmly keeps the hard drive secured to the case. The next step is to plug in the various power cables to the different parts in the computer. Firstly, insert the 24-pin motherboard power connector, then the 8-pin motherboard power connector. Then insert the 6-pin or 8-pin graphics power connector. The next step is to plug in the SATA data cables from the DVD drive and hard drive into the SATA ports on the motherboard. Then, plug into the hard drive one of the SATA data cables from the motherboard and a SATA power cable coming from the power supply. The next step is to install the DVD drive. This involves removing a small plastic bracket, then lining up the DVD drive with an open slot and sliding it in. Once it is in line with the holes for the bracket, put the bracket back in and turn the knob to ensure that it fastens the DVD drive to the computer case. Then, like the hard drive, plug in both a SATA power cable from the power supply and a SATA data cable from the motherboard into the DVD drive. Then, plug your fans into the motherboard into the correct 3-pin or 4-pin slot. Then, connect the front panel audio connector and front panel USB connector onto their appropriate slots on the motherboard. Then connect the front panel power switch, reset button, and any other appropriate switches onto the switch pins on the motherboard. After some quick cable management and tidying up of the cables, we can now turn on the computer for the first time and see if it works. So now that we have fans spinning, lights coming on, and the computer displaying a picture to a monitor, that brings the assembly of the computer to an end. All that's required now is to install your desired copy of Windows, and you're away. So thanks very much for watching, guys, and I'll catch you in the next video.